was looking through my mobile the other day, looking at all the old pictures that I had on my phone from when we first started the plot, and I realised it's a year this February. And what a year it's been for us. There's been a lot of change on the allotment. When we first came onto the allotment, it was heavy clay soil, flooded easily, full of rubbish, buried in the ground and all over the surface, loads of scraps of all sorts of manner of things, and it was heavy clay, hard to dig soil. And even though we're on a slope, it used to flood very easily. One of the first jobs we had to do is start clearing off the plot, working out roughly where we were going to put the beds. Because of the state of the plot, which the previous owner used to burn all his business rubbish here, it was quite a mess. So we decided predominantly to use no dig beds. The bramble had other ideas. The bramble was quite immense all the way through the plot. Even in places where it didn't look like there was bramble under the ground. Dug up as many of the brambles as we possibly could, but going through the soil, the root system, it was just everywhere. And this year there's still loads of bramble everywhere, which we're trying to hand dig out as much as possible. We started off with 9 beds in total, and we had 3 beds that we built that we just dug over and planted straight into the ground. We wanted to do no dig because it was going to make life easier for me to help weed. I don't have much energy and I'm not the wellest of people, so I still want to be able to enjoy the outdoors and enjoy my allotment plot with a little less effort. The crops we grew last year, and were mainly successful, were lettuces, pak choi, carrot, peas, broad beans, cabbages. Brassicas did really well in general. Carobies, strawberries, beetroots, all the kind of the basics on the plot. Which, again, we were quite surprised since the first year for us was experimental. Not all crops though were 100% successful. Where our early cabbages were fantastic, our cabbages that were later in the season, like Savoys and certain red cabbages, were attacked heavily by whitefly. Whitefly for us last year was a major issue, to the fact where we took the nets off the areas and it was plumes of whitefly everywhere, even though the allotment was absolutely full of ladybirds. So after an exciting first year, a few experiments and a few new ideas, the new crops that we're going to be trying this year is more fruit bushes and fruit trees. Now, we did have raspberries down here last year, but it was the first year I'd actually bought them, and we did get a few little raspberries off, but not as prolific as the one I had in my garden. The one in my garden I actually dug up and actually moved over to the plot this year. Created a little mini fruiting orchard area. This is where I've heavily wood chipped over, and I have my apple tree and pear trees in pots, as well as my blueberries. I wanted to have the blueberries so I've got a little bit more control of how big they go, and I didn't want to have to deal with bushes in the ground this year. This area I'm going to add more to. It's nice and secluded, full sun all day round, and it actually has added protection from the wind as well. Hoping we're going to have plenty of soft fruit this year, as well as with the strawberries as well. Now, last year we built a 2-bay small compost bin because we knew as soon as we wanted to go no dig, we were going to have to start making our own compost through the year. Unfortunately, we ran out of room within the first few months of actually building the compost. We have local companies who drop their green waste off, their grass clippings, leaves, twigs and things like that, and we also get hold of vegetable scraps quite easily locally as well. Soon this filled up. So partway through the year we built a much larger bay, which we transferred all the compost out of the other 2 bays and carried on filling it through the year. Beginning of this year we were able to use that compost on the plot. Soon realised though that that particular compost bay was kind of in the way, and it's a waste of space. We could easily fit another bed where that was. We decided to take down the old dilapidated metal shed that had been here for many years down and repurpose as much as what we could of the actual shed. The bays are much bigger, give us a lot more room, and we're able to fill up the ends first and then turn them into the middles, so we'll always have room for our compost bays. We still have the old compost bays, the smaller ones, for any time that we get excess grass, because the one thing we do get lots of is mowed grass. So if I've got 4 different compost bays I can actually spread it about in, there's less chance of putting too much grass to make it slimy and sloppy into the bays in one go. Looking at the amount of compost we made last year and the amount of green waste we actually had to turn away, I'm hoping this year we're going to be able to again get enough to fill our beds. The compost from last year that we dug, we actually were able to create 3 new beds on the site, plus top up every other bed, so 9 beds in total of a top up of fresh compost on the top. We only had the use of a borrowed greenhouse last year on another member's plot. He wasn't going to grow in there that year, so he said he was more than happy for us to go in and plant what we wanted to plant in there, which we did. We planted chilies and aubergines. But this year I have my own greenhouse, be it a very small one, but we've also started building a polytunnel using 10-foot trampoline poles and pallets, with a few spare bits of battens and obviously screws. We were able to source locally for free, and the hoops, again, the trampoline parts were freebies on a freebie site that people no longer wanted, so all those items were free. It was just the battens that we actually had to pay for. We are going to release a video of our build of the polytunnel in hyperlapse. It will probably be a 3 to 4 part series. The use of a polytunnel will have some great advantages for us this year. Growing our tomatoes indoors and our chilies will hopefully help with the harvest. Now last year we did grow tomatoes outside and we had well over 80 kilos of tomatoes from all our plants. And we still will be growing some tomatoes outdoors. With the use of the polytunnel, I'm hoping to extend our planting season. So, a year on, what am I hoping to achieve this year? Well, I'm going to be growing a lot more crops this year. I think I've got the gist of what the beds can produce and what beds do well and what beds need a little bit more work on. A lot of our fruit and vegetables we freeze or dehydrate to store throughout the year. And my goal is this year is to grow enough food to try and keep us as long as possible through the year. I'll be growing much more produce of food that we heavily rely off. The allotment is completely different to when we first moved on. You wouldn't even recognise it. In fact, many plot holders are quite surprised with the amount of work that we managed to do last year. This year, we're not going to have to do so much heavy lugging around. We have spent January starting to build the polytunnel and a few new beds, but I'm hoping within the next month all that heavier stuff is actually all done, and then the rest of the growing season is going to be so much easier, and hopefully we can just focus on growing seeds and planting.